Introduction. Friends, if you are excited to watch the much-awaited Peacemaker Season 2 2025 in English, then make sure to like this video. And if you are visiting our channel for the very first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel because here we bring you all the latest updates, reviews, fun facts, and behind-the-scenes stories from the world of movies and web series. Trust me, you don't want to miss out. So buckle up because today's video is going to be packed with everything you need to know about Peacemaker Season 2. In this video, we'll cover what Peacemaker Season 2 is all about, what's the plot, what's new this season, and why fans across the world are so hyped for its return. Whether you're a die-hard fan of the first season or someone curious to jump into this wild, action-packed world, you're in the right place. We'll talk about where you can watch this series, including which OTT platforms it will stream on, any satellite TV options, and the official release dates so you can mark your calendars. But wait, that's just the beginning. We'll also take you behind the curtain and explore the technical department. We're talking about the direction, cinematography, production design, editing, and special effects that bring the world of Peacemaker to life. This season promises even bigger action, sharper humor, and wild surprises, and we'll break down how the creative team pulled it all off. Of course, we can't miss the music department because if you watched Season 1, you know the soundtrack was an absolute blast. We'll talk about the background score, the song selections, and how the music shapes the mood and energy of the show. Whether it's a rock anthem or a tense instrumental piece, the music of Peacemaker plays a huge role, and we're here to unpack it. We'll also dive into pre-production, from the planning stages, writing, and casting, to the filming process and the on-set challenges the cast and crew faced. And once filming wraps, there's the crucial phase of post-production, editing, adding visual effects, sound mixing, and fine-tuning everything to perfection. We'll cover how all these pieces come together to create the final product you'll see on screen. Naturally, we'll touch on the budget and expectations for Peacemaker Season 2. How much was invested in making this series? What's the buzz in terms of streaming numbers or critical reception? Will it break records or even outperform Season 1? We'll share all the juicy details. Now, when it comes to the storyline, I'll give you a short review, no major spoilers, so you can get a sense of the plot, the conflicts, and the emotional arcs to look forward to. Whether it's explosive action, sharp-witted banter, or heartfelt moments, Peacemaker delivers a mix of everything, and we'll break down why the story has fans so hooked. We'll also look at the star cast, who's back, who's new, and who's making a surprising return. I'll tell you which actors are reprising their iconic roles, which fresh faces are joining the crew, and how their performances are shaping up. We'll explore the characters, their relationships, and the dynamic chemistry that makes this series so entertaining. And let's not forget the fun facts and trivia, things like Easter eggs, behind-the-scenes stories, character details, and little-known facts that every Peacemaker fan will love. These details make watching the series even more enjoyable, and you'll be able to impress your friends with all your insider knowledge. So friends, I highly recommend you watch this video till the end because we have so much exciting content lined up for you. Trust me, you don't want to miss a second of it. So without wasting any more time, let's jump right into the world of Peacemaker Season 2 and get started. Alright friends, let's dive into the wild ride that is Peacemaker Season 2 and break down its plot and narrative in a way that's as fun as the show itself. Buckle up because this season is packed with chaos, laughs, jaw-dropping action, and even a surprising amount of heart. From the very first episode, Peacemaker Season 2 throws us right back into the madness. There's no slow build-up, no gentle reintroduction, boom. We're dropped straight into the thick of it. Christopher Smith, aka Peacemaker, is still wrestling with his personal demons, his complicated past, and that constant battle between his crude sense of humor and his surprisingly good heart. But this time, the stakes are even higher. The government has fresh missions, the team is back together, though not without tension, and a brand new threat looms on the horizon, one that's darker, weirder, and far more unpredictable than anything they've faced before. What's brilliant is how the season balances pure absurdity with genuine character development. On the surface, it's full of explosions, outrageous fight scenes, bizarre villains, and Peacemaker's hilarious one-liners. But underneath, there's a raw, emotional undercurrent. Peacemaker is still haunted by guilt, still seeking redemption, and still figuring out what it actually means to be a hero, or at least a slightly better human being. And the show doesn't shy away from showing his messy, flawed journey. The narrative plays with perspective in a really entertaining way. It's not just Peacemaker's story. The supporting characters get their moments to shine too. We get glimpses into their backstories, their motivations, and their struggles, which makes the team dynamic even richer. And here's the fun part. The show constantly surprises you with tonal shifts. One moment you're laughing at a completely ridiculous dance sequence or a sarcastic insult, and the next you're hit with an emotional gut punch or a moral dilemma that actually makes you stop and think. In terms of structure, while it roughly follows a mission-of-the-week format in some episodes, it's all woven into a bigger arc that slowly unfolds. The writers are clever with how they drop hints, misdirect you, and then hit you with big reveals. There are some fantastic turning points, sudden betrayals, unexpected alliances, and a few shocking character exits that will leave your jaw on the floor. Just when you think you've figured out where the story's headed, it takes a sharp left turn into completely bonkers territory, and that unpredictability is part of what makes it so addictive. One of the most entertaining aspects is how the series leans into the absurdity of the superhero world without losing its emotional core. You'll see everything from outlandish gadgets and bizarre creatures to very human moments of vulnerability and friendship. And the humor? It's razor-sharp, sometimes ridiculous, sometimes dark, but always effective. Peacemaker's filterless mouth gets him into trouble as often as it saves the day, and his interactions with the team, especially the returning fan favorites, are pure comedy gold. Conflicts are not just external. Yes, there are villains and battles, but the real tension often comes from within the group. Mistrust, clashing egos, personal baggage, these create friction that's just as explosive as the action scenes. And Peacemaker himself is a walking conflict, trying to live up to his ideals, trying to break free from his past, and constantly screwing up along the way. Emotionally, the show hits surprising highs. It's not just an action comedy. It dives into themes of forgiveness, identity, loyalty, and the search for meaning in a chaotic world. There are quiet moments of reflection, sudden bursts of vulnerability, and some really beautiful character arcs that sneak up on you. By the end of the season, you realize you've laughed, cheered, maybe even teared up a little, and that's the magic of Peacemaker. So, if you're ready for a roller coaster of epic battles, outrageous humor, and unexpectedly touching character moments, Peacemaker Season 2 is here to deliver. And trust me, you won't see half of the wild stuff coming, and that's exactly why you'll love every minute of it. Let's talk about the beating heart of Peacemaker Season 2, the characters. 'Cause sure, the explosions are big, the action is wild, and the jokes fly at lightning speed, but it's the characters that make this series something you can't stop watching. This season doesn't just rely on Christopher Smith's offbeat charm, it digs deep into everyone around him, layering their stories and pushing their arcs in unexpected directions. Peacemaker himself is still a glorious mess. On the surface, he's the same loudmouth with the shiny helmet and zero filter, spouting off inappropriate jokes and over-the-top one-liners, but underneath, he's on a pretty profound journey. Season 2 doesn't let him stay in his comfort zone. It throws him into situations where he's forced to confront his guilt, his insecurities, and his desperate need for connection. You watch him stumble through moments of vulnerability, lash out when he feels cornered, and struggle to define what kind of man, or maybe just what kind of teammate, he wants to be. It's that mix of ridiculousness and raw humanity that keeps you rooting for him, even when he's making a total mess of things. Then we've got the team, and oh boy, they are not just sidekicks in Peacemaker's story, they are stars in their own right. Each of them gets their time in the spotlight, their backstories peeled back layer by layer. Team dynamics are one of the show's best parts because these people are basically a group of misfits trying to function as something resembling a unit, and it's messy, hilarious, and often surprisingly touching. Their relationships shift, crack, and heal in ways that constantly keep you invested. Take Harcourt, for example. She's still the tough, no-nonsense operative, but we see more of her internal struggles and why she keeps people at arm's length. Watching her slowly let her guard down, especially around Peacemaker, gives us some of the most emotionally charged moments of the season. Economist, the tech guy, brings his dry humor and awkward charm, but this time he's not just comic relief. He's wrestling with his own sense of worth and place in the team. And A.R.G.U.S? She's still the moral compass, but this season really pushes her into moral gray zones, forcing her to question her loyalty, her choices, and how far she's willing to go to do the right thing. What's so fun about these characters is that they aren't perfect heroes, far from it. They're constantly clashing, messing up, forgiving each other, and figuring out how to survive together. Their banter is sharp, their conflicts feel real, and when they come together in those rare, hard-earned moments of unity, it feels genuinely rewarding. And let's not forget the newcomers. This season introduces new faces who shake up the dynamics in all the right ways. Some challenge the team, some stir up old wounds, and some unexpectedly become allies. These new characters don't just show up for shock value, they push the main cast to grow, to reevaluate their goals, and sometimes to question their own beliefs. The beauty of Peacemaker Season 2's character work is how it blends chaos and comedy with real emotional stakes. Motivations evolve, alliances shift, and people reveal hidden depths you wouldn't expect from a show where the main guy dances around in tidy witties with a bald eagle sidekick. Peacemaker's longing for redemption, Harcourt's battle with vulnerability, A.R.G.U.S' struggle to balance her personal and professional life, it all ties into the bigger narrative, shaping not just the story but the very heart of the show. And the transformations aren't just superficial. By the time you get deep into the season, you realize how far some of these characters have come, and sometimes how far they still have to go. It's messy, it's funny, it's sometimes heartbreakingly honest, and that's exactly why watching them stumble, clash, and occasionally triumph is so entertaining. These are characters who stick with you long after the credits roll, and that's what makes the whole experience feel so much bigger and richer than your average superhero romp. Let's get into one of the absolute best parts of Peacemaker Season 2, the performances. 'Cause no matter how wild the plot gets or how off-the-wall the action scenes are, it's the actors who make this world feel alive, chaotic, and completely addictive to watch. And oh boy, do they deliver this season. Starting with John Cena, who proves once again that he was born to play Peacemaker. Cena doesn't just wear the costume. He is the character, and that's no easy task when you're juggling comedy, action, and moments of real emotional weight. He brings this perfect mix of brute force and childlike vulnerability that somehow makes you laugh at his ridiculous antics one second and then genuinely feel for him the next. Cena has this rare ability to make Peacemaker's moments of self-doubt and pain hit just as hard as his outrageous one-liners. Whether he's awkwardly trying to connect with his team or spiraling into guilt over his past, Cena keeps it raw, unpredictable, and endlessly watchable. Then there's Holland as Harcourt, who absolutely nails the tough-as-nails exterior while letting just enough cracks show to reveal the humanity underneath. She plays Harcourt with a quiet intensity that makes her every glare, every line of dry sarcasm, and every rare moment of softness hit with precision. Holland and Cena's chemistry is electric, not in the cliché romance sense but in the way two damaged people keep circling each other, unsure if they can fully trust or lean on the other. A.R.G.U.S as Economist is another gem. He takes what could have been a purely comic relief role and infuses it with heart. His deadpan delivery, his quiet insecurities, and the way he steps up when it really matters give the character a surprising amount of depth. You laugh at his awkward moments, but you also root for him when he proves he's more than just the guy behind the computer screen. And let's talk about Danielle Brooks as A.R.G.U.S. She's an absolute powerhouse this season. Brooks brings so much emotional range to the role, flipping effortlessly between moments of wide-eyed idealism, moral conflict, and pure, gut-wrenching honesty. She has some of the most emotionally charged scenes in the season, and she carries them with so much authenticity that you can't help but get pulled in. She also has incredible comedic timing, managing to be both the heart and the humor of the team. The supporting cast, both returning favorites and newcomers, elevate the show in ways that keep things fresh. Every side character feels fully alive, even the smallest roles get moments to shine, and the actors don't waste a second of their screen time. The villains this season are played with delicious menace and charisma, chewing up the scenery in all the best ways without ever tipping into cartoonish territory. And the new allies who show up? They come in swinging, adding unpredictable energy and bouncing off the main cast with sharp, memorable performances. What's really remarkable is how these actors handle the tonal shifts of the show. One minute, they're in the middle of a ridiculous, over-the-top action sequence, and the next, they're sitting in a quiet moment of reflection or heartbreak. It takes real talent to sell that kind of whiplash without losing the audience, and this cast pulls it off beautifully. They make the absurd believable, the hilarious touching, and the dramatic moments feel earned rather than forced. It's that collective effort, that sense of everyone bringing their A-game, that makes Peacemaker Season 2 more than just another superhero show. The leads, the supporting players, the recurring characters, they all pour so much energy and authenticity into their roles that you're fully immersed in this wild, dysfunctional world. Whether they're punching bad guys, delivering snarky comebacks, or revealing their deepest fears, these actors make every second count and remind you why you keep coming back for more. Let's dive into the chaotic genius steering the ship behind Peacemaker Season 2. The direction! 'Cause if you think this series is just a bunch of random explosions, fistfights, and jokes crammed together, think again. The director's hand is all over this season, and it's what gives the show its unmistakable personality, swinging effortlessly between absurd comedy, emotional drama, and explosive action without ever losing control of the ride. Right from the first frame, the director sets the tone, irreverent, edgy, and self-aware, but with a surprisingly big heart underneath. You can feel the love for the characters and their messy journeys, even as the world around them spins into complete chaos. The balance of tones is no accident, it's carefully orchestrated. One moment you're in a brutal, bone-crunching fight sequence, the next you're watching Peacemaker wrestle with guilt or share an unexpectedly tender moment with a teammate, and before you know it, you're laughing at a wildly inappropriate joke or an offbeat dance number. It's that seamless shifting of gears that keeps you hooked, and it takes a sharp directorial vision to pull it off without making the whole thing collapse under its own weight. Pacing is another masterstroke. The director knows exactly when to slam on the gas and when to ease up. The action scenes are fast, furious, and packed with style, but crucially, they don't overshadow the quieter, more intimate moments. You're never left feeling like you're just waiting for the next explosion because the show makes sure the character beats hit just as hard as the punches. There's a rhythm to the chaos, and the director controls it with precision, building tension when needed, then breaking it with a perfectly timed joke or a gut punch of emotion. Shot composition is where things get really fun. Camera work has a kinetic, almost punk rock energy, but it's not just flash for the sake of flash. There are smart visual choices everywhere, from the way fight scenes are choreographed in tight, messy spaces to the way emotional conversations are framed to highlight the vulnerability of the characters. The show plays with close-ups, wide shots, and even the occasional surreal visual gag to keep things visually dynamic. And let's not forget those signature long takes and tracking shots that let the action unfold in real time. They're not just technically impressive, they pull you right into the middle of the chaos. Stylistic choices pop up all over the place. There's the use of music, which isn't just background noise but an integral part of the mood, turning even the most ridiculous scenes into iconic moments. There's the playful use of color, often sharp and vivid, that makes the world feel heightened without tipping into full-blown parody. And of course, there's the way the director leans into the show's self-aware humor, breaking tension, poking fun at genre conventions, and winking at the audience without ever undercutting the sincerity of the characters. What really stands out is the director's commitment to character-driven storytelling. No matter how big or bonkers the set pieces get, the focus stays on the people at the center of it all. Every punch thrown, every joke cracked, every wild twist in the plot, it all feeds back into the characters' emotional journeys. That's what makes the show more than just a fun spectacle. It's why you actually care when things go sideways, and why the emotional payoffs land as hard as they do. So when you're watching Peacemaker Season 2 and you're laughing, gasping, or sitting on the edge of your seat, know that none of it's by accident. The director is working behind the scenes like a master conductor, turning chaos into music and making sure every note, whether loud, quiet, or absolutely insane, hits exactly where it's supposed to. It's bold, it's stylish, and it's one of the key reasons the show feels like such an unpredictable and unforgettable blast. Let's talk about the visual playground of Peacemaker Season 2, because the cinematography here isn't just about making things look cool, though it absolutely does that. It's about pulling you deeper into the world, cranking up the tension, and adding layers of meaning to the madness on screen. Every camera angle, every flicker of light, every carefully chosen frame is doing heavy lifting to turn this superhero circus into something that feels alive, unpredictable, and often downright stunning. First off, the camera work has an energy that matches Peacemaker himself, bold, unfiltered, and sometimes beautifully chaotic. The show doesn't play it safe with standard framing. Instead, it dives headfirst into the action, putting you right in the middle of the punches, gunfights, and wildly destructive set pieces. You get handheld shots that rattle and shake during brawls, giving the fights a gritty, street-level feel. Then you get smooth, sweeping tracking shots that follow characters through chaos, making you feel like you're right there, ducking bullets and dodging debris. It's this balance between rough-edged intensity and cinematic polish that keeps your eyes glued to the screen. Lighting is another character all on its own this season. When the show wants to lean into emotional vulnerability, it softens the lighting, throwing characters into half-shadows or bathing them in warm, melancholy tones. You can feel the mood shift just by how the light hits a character's face, whether it's a tense confession in the dark or a rare moment of connection under a flickering street lamp. And when the action cranks up, that's when the lighting explodes into bold, saturated colors, neon blues, electric reds, harsh whites, creating a world that feels larger than life, just slightly off-kilter and totally addictive to watch. The framing is packed with intention, too. You've got these tight, almost claustrophobic close-ups during character confrontations where you can practically see the sweat and the nervous flicker in someone's eyes. Then the show pulls back for wide shots that let the absurdity of the moment sink in, like Peacemaker standing in the middle of a flaming battlefield with that iconic silver helmet gleaming under the moonlight. It's these shifts in perspective that make the emotional beats land harder and the action sequences feel massive. And let's not skip over the standout visual moments, because this season has plenty. Think of those slow-motion shots where chaos unfolds frame by frame, bullets cutting through the air, characters diving for cover, every detail frozen in glorious, heart-pounding tension. Or those beautifully awkward, almost surreal sequences where the camera lingers just a beat too long on Peacemaker dancing, posing, or just being his bizarre, hilarious self. These moments stick with you not just because of what's happening, but because of how they're captured, with style, flair, and a wink at the audience. Atmosphere is where the cinematography truly shines. Whether it's building tension in a dimly lit corridor where you can practically hear your own heartbeat, or creating moments of strange beauty amid the carnage, the visual choices shape how you feel in every scene. There's a deliberate contrast between the messy, brutal reality of these characters and the almost operatic way their world is presented. It's gritty, sure, but it's also artful, making room for both spectacle and intimacy. In short, Peacemaker Season 2's cinematography doesn't just show you what's happening, it makes you feel it. Sweeps you into the chaos, holds you in the quiet, and dazzles you with moments that are as unforgettable as they are visually stunning. Every angle, every shadow, every splash of color is part of the wild ride, and it's a big reason why this season isn't just fun to watch, it's an experience you want to dive into headfirst. Let's jump into one of the sneakiest heroes of Peacemaker Season 2, the editing and pacing. You might not notice it at first because you're too busy laughing at the absurd one-liners, gasping at the brutal action, or shaking your head at Peacemaker's latest disaster, but trust me, the way this show is cut together is a big part of why it's so addictive to watch. The editing keeps everything snapping along like a well-timed drumbeat, pulling you through the chaos without ever letting you get bored, confused, or restless. The rhythm of the show is a masterclass in controlled chaos. The editors know exactly when to let a moment breathe and when to punch the gas. You get scenes that linger just long enough for the awkwardness to hit maximum cringe, like Peacemaker rambling his way through yet another disastrous attempt at bonding, and then, just before you start squirming in your seat, the pace shifts. Boom, a sharp cut to a gunfight, a chase, or some completely unexpected twist that yanks you right back into the action. The balance between fast and slow, loud and quiet, absurd and emotional is what keeps you glued to the screen episode after episode. Transitions are where the editing really flexes its muscles. We're not talking about simple cuts from one scene to the next, we're talking about stylish, punchy transitions that match the show's wild energy. Sometimes it's a smash cut straight from an intense confrontation to Peacemaker rocking out alone in his trailer. Other times, it's a slow, creeping build-up that suddenly explodes into chaos. There are moments where the editing deliberately throws you off balance, skipping ahead or flashing back to reframe what you just saw, and it all adds to the sense that you're on a ride where anything can happen. Pacing-wise, this season is a thrill. The show avoids the classic superhero slump where you hit a mid-season drag and start checking your watch. Instead, it keeps stacking tension, escalating conflicts, and tossing in curveballs that force the characters to react and evolve. Even in the quieter episodes, yes, there are a few, the emotional stakes stay high and the editing makes sure you feel every beat of tension. It's not afraid to slow down for a heartfelt conversation or a character reckoning with their mistakes, but it never feels like the story is stalling. Instead, those slower moments deepen the impact of the chaos that follows, making the explosions and showdowns feel earned rather than empty spectacle. One of the real editing triumphs is how the humor is handled. Comedy is all about timing, and Peacemaker nails it. The cuts are sharp, the reaction shots are perfectly placed, and the editor clearly understands that sometimes the funniest thing you can do is hold on a character's dumbfounded face just a second longer than expected. That precision is what turns funny lines into laugh-out-loud moments and keeps the comedy from ever feeling forced or out of sync with the darker themes. And let's not forget the emotional punches. When the show wants to hit you in the gut, the editing knows exactly how to do it. It lingers when it needs to, draws out the silence, lets you sit with the weight of what just happened. Creates space for characters to fall apart, to reach out, to make choices that change everything. And then, just when you think you've caught your breath, it slams you into the next crisis with ruthless momentum. So while you're watching Peacemaker Season 2 and you're marveling at the fights, the laughs, the chaos, take a moment to appreciate the behind-the-scenes magic of the editing. It's the glue that holds this roller coaster together, the rhythm section in this wild rock band, the reason the show doesn't just entertain but completely sweeps you along for the ride. Sharp, smart, and bursting with attitude, just like the show itself, and without it, Peacemaker wouldn't hit nearly as hard. Now let's dive into the auditory world of Peacemaker Season 2, the soundtrack and score, which play as much of a starring role as the characters themselves. When it comes to this show, music isn't just something that fills the background. No, it's integral to the mood, the rhythm, and the emotional roller coaster that this season takes you on. It's the secret ingredient that blends perfectly with the chaos, hilarity, and heart of the show. Let's start with the soundtrack because it's absolutely on point. Peacemaker isn't shy about its love for loud, unapologetic rock, and Season 2 cranks that up to 11. The soundtrack takes you through a whirlwind of classic anthems and deep cuts, with each song carefully chosen to match the tone of the scene. Whether it's a high-octane action sequence, a laugh-out-loud moment, or even a surprisingly emotional beat, the music makes sure that every moment lands with impact. And here's the thing, it doesn't just serve as a backdrop. These tracks are characters in the show, underscoring everything from Peacemaker's explosive nature to the quieter, more vulnerable moments of his journey. There's an art to picking the right song, and Peacemaker absolutely nails it, whether it's a badass 80s rock hit during a fight scene or a downbeat ballad playing under a scene of raw character reflection. You can almost feel the music shaping the very air around you. Then there's the score. And while the soundtrack may be loud and proud, the score does the heavy lifting when it comes to the show's emotional depth. It's not in your face, but it's always present, quietly building and swelling in the background as it mirrors the inner turmoil of the characters. There's a recurring motif throughout the season, a musical theme that builds whenever the emotional stakes are raised, like a subtle but powerful whisper in the soundtrack's ear, pulling you deeper into the moment. Doesn't hit you over the head, but it builds tension and anticipation, guiding you through the twists and turns of the story. And oh, those moments of expertly used silence. The score knows when to step back and let the characters speak for themselves. When a particularly poignant scene is unfolding, whether it's a moment of reckoning, loss, or revelation, the absence of music heightens the emotion. The quiet underscores the weight of what's happening, making the silence itself an element of storytelling. It's almost as if the score lets you sit with the characters' feelings, forcing you to soak in the gravity of the scene before the music kicks back in to propel you forward again. What's really impressive is how the music never overwhelms the narrative. It's a fine line to walk, especially in a show as manic and fast-paced as Peacemaker, where the energy can be all over the place. But the music doesn't try to steal the spotlight. It works with the story, highlighting moments without overshadowing them. Whether it's accompanying a tense standoff or a perfectly timed joke, the score never becomes the thing you focus on. It enhances what you're already watching. It knows when to pull back, when to surge forward, and when to just sit there, quietly building an undercurrent of emotion that the audience can feel without even realizing it. There are certain tracks that are so perfectly placed they stick with you long after the credits roll. It's those unexpected musical choices that make you realize just how integral music is to the experience. A song that you didn't expect suddenly turns into a character's theme, a track that elevates a pivotal moment, or maybe a tune that gives a feeling of nostalgia or freedom right when you least expect it. In short, Peacemaker Season 2 isn't just a visual feast, it's an auditory one too. The soundtrack and score work in perfect harmony, lifting the show to new heights by knowing exactly when to be loud, when to be soft, and when to let silence speak volumes. Music becomes a companion to the characters' journeys, sometimes echoing their feelings, sometimes amplifying their actions, but always making the story richer, more engaging, and unforgettable. The sound of Peacemaker's world is just as essential as the world itself, and without it, the show would lose a huge part of its magic. Peacemaker Season 2 is more than just a wild ride of absurd humor and explosive action. At its core, it's about some pretty deep themes, ones that sneak up on you between the jokes and the chaos. Beneath the surface of crude one-liners and fight scenes, the show tackles identity, redemption, and the messy nature of human relationships. And it does so in a way that doesn't feel preachy or forced. It's embedded in the characters, their arcs, and the world they're navigating. The heart of it all is the idea of self-acceptance and redemption. Peacemaker, the character you'd expect to be all bravado and invincibility, is on a constant journey of self-discovery. He's forced to confront his past, all the mistakes, all the violence, and the way he's defined himself by this warped sense of justice. Throughout the season, you see him struggle with who he is versus who he wants to be. It's a messy journey, full of setbacks and awkward moments, but that's what makes it real. The show explores how people can change, but only if they're willing to face their flaws, let go of their toxic beliefs, and start over. Peacemaker's journey is one of growth, not in some heroic, perfect way, but in a messy, imperfect, deeply human way. And it's a hell of a lot more relatable because of it. Then there's the theme of relationships. Whether it's Peacemaker's relationship with his father, that's a whole can of worms, his team, or even the unexpected friendships that form throughout the season, the show doesn't shy away from the complexity of human connection. These aren't just side characters. They each have their own baggage, their own motivations, and their own struggles with trust, loyalty, and vulnerability. Team dynamic is full of tension, awkwardness, and plenty of moments where everyone is just trying to get along. It's a refreshing take on what it means to be a hero, showing that even the most dysfunctional group can come together to do the right thing, but only if they're willing to face their own issues first. The show also digs into the theme of what makes a hero, and whether Peacemaker, with his violent methods and often questionable decisions, really fits that mold. Is it enough to do good things if you're doing them for the wrong reasons? Or is it about the journey, the messy steps you take along the way, and the fact that you try? This theme is explored in so many subtle ways, like how Peacemaker's interactions with his team slowly shift from toxic camaraderie to genuine connection, or how he slowly begins to question his blind obedience to authority figures like his father. The show doesn't hand you the answer, but it forces you to think about what makes a hero. Is it about being perfect, or about just doing your best with the messed up tools you have? And then there's the whole idea of legacy. For Peacemaker, his father is a constant shadow hanging over him, but there's also the question of whether he'll continue down the same dark path or forge his own. It's a tension that drives a lot of the emotional beats. Does he have to live up to his father's legacy, or is he allowed to carve out a new path for himself? And what does that mean for those around him? It's a question of whether we're bound by the mistakes of our past, or if we have the power to define our own futures. The beauty of these themes is that they never feel heavy-handed. They don't derail the humor or the action, they just naturally weave into the narrative. The moments of introspection and emotional growth are framed by the ridiculousness of Peacemaker's world, and that's what makes it work. You never feel like the show is trying to teach you a lesson. Instead, it just shows you these raw, messy, emotional moments that feel authentic. The humor might come fast and furious, but beneath it, there's always something deeper being explored. The messages about identity, redemption, and what it means to be a hero aren't just thought-provoking, they linger. They make you think about the way we define ourselves and how our past shape us, but also how we can choose to break free of those chains and rewrite our own stories. Peacemaker may be wrapped up in a ridiculous, high-octane world, but at its core, it's about the messiness of being human, and that's what makes it so much more than just another superhero show. Alright, let's talk about the visual effects in Peacemaker Season 2, where things get as wild as you'd expect from a show about a guy who wears a shiny helmet and punches his way through a crazy world of superhuman beings. This is a show that's all about embracing the over-the-top, larger-than-life moments, and the effects team knows exactly how to make those jaw-dropping, mind-blowing scenes pop without ever feeling out of place. First, let's address the big question. Do the visual effects blend into the world of Peacemaker, or do they pull you out of it? In a show like this, it's easy to go too far with CGI and make everything feel fake, but Season 2 does a great job of keeping the effects grounded enough to feel like they belong in the wacky, anarchic world Peacemaker lives in. Whether it's an explosion, a ridiculously over-the-top battle, or the bizarre creatures that pop up in the show, the effects are seamless. They're not just eye candy for the sake of spectacle, but an extension of the chaos that surrounds these characters. The VFX team knows when to go big, like when Peacemaker is in the middle of an intense fight or when something fantastical is happening, but they also know when to step back and let the characters and the story take center stage. But here's where it gets really interesting: practical effects versus CGI. It's clear that Peacemaker Season 2 strikes a balance between the two, and it works beautifully. The practical effects, the physical stunts, the props, the hand-to-hand combat, feel raw and grounded. These moments give the action weight and texture. You feel the punches land, the blows connect. When Peacemaker is getting into a fight, you know it's not just CGI enhanced, but that there's real physicality behind it. These practical effects anchor the show, making it feel more tactile and real, even when the story goes into wild comic book territory. On the flip side, the CGI is used in a way that doesn't take you out of the moment but rather amplifies the madness of Peacemaker's world. Creature designs, for example, are where the CGI truly shines. These aren't just generic monsters, they're designed to be weird, unsettling, and at times downright hilarious. Whether it's some absurd alien or a larger-than-life battle sequence, the CGI enhances the surreal nature of the show without overwhelming it. It's cartoonish in the best possible way, embracing the ridiculous and the impossible, but it never feels like it's trying too hard. One of the strengths of the visual effects here is their integration into the narrative. The CGI doesn't just stand out because it looks cool, it supports the story and the themes. The big, dramatic moments are matched by digital effects that heighten the sense of stakes, but they never dominate the screen. You never get the sense that the VFX are just there for the sake of showing off. Instead, they feel earned. When there's a monster charging at Peacemaker, you feel the threat because the visual effects have been layered in so thoughtfully. The balance between practical and digital effects also creates a pleasing variety. The more grounded, physical moments are complemented by the over-the-top fantasy elements. Take, for example, the action sequences where the camera spins through walls of fire, or when Peacemaker's team is battling a completely outlandish monster. The practicality of the fight choreography gives the moment grit, but the digital elements take the insanity up a notch, making everything just a bit more wild and unpredictable. And it's not just about the fight scenes. Even in the quieter, more emotional moments, the subtle use of visual effects can add so much to the tone. It's in the way light, color, and effects are used to heighten emotional beats. Maybe it's the shimmering glow of an alien artifact or the subtle digital distortion of a character's mind spiraling into chaos. It's these smaller moments where the visual effects enhance the emotional atmosphere, turning the show into a complete sensory experience. To wrap it up, the visual effects in Peacemaker Season 2 are smartly integrated into the fabric of the show, amplifying the already wild world without ever overshadowing it. They're bold and daring but always serve the story. Practical effects give the world weight and tangibility, while CGI adds the absurdity and spectacle that this show thrives on. It's a balance that makes everything feel seamless. The impossible is made possible, but in a way that keeps you right there in the thick of it, never too far from reality but always pushing the boundaries of what you thought could happen. Let's talk about the dialogue and script in Peacemaker Season 2 because let's face it, the sharp wit and irreverent humor are as much a part of the show's DNA as the ridiculous action sequences and insane characters. If you've seen even a few minutes of this show, you know the dialogue is one of the things that makes it so addictive. It's not just clever for the sake of cleverness, it's smart, hilarious, and at times surprisingly emotional. It's the kind of dialogue that sticks with you long after the episode ends, and some lines feel like they could become cult classic catchphrases if the world was lucky enough. What makes the dialogue in Peacemaker so special is how effortlessly it mixes sharp wit with emotional depth. At one moment, you're laughing at Peacemaker's ridiculous one-liners, the kind of stuff that's so absurd you're not sure how it's possible that anyone can be that funny, and in the next, you're hit with a line that hits straight in the feels. It's like the show knows exactly when to give you a joke and when to pull back and make you feel the weight of the situation. The script doesn't waste any time trying to be serious in the traditional sense. Instead, it layers moments of raw, emotional truth right on top of the humor. And that's what makes it land so well. You don't expect to feel something while Peacemaker is being an insufferable jerk, but somehow the writing always knows how to balance the absurd with the poignant. And then there's the wit. This is a show that thrives on sharp, fast-paced dialogue that comes at you like a machine gun, rapid-fire and relentless. Peacemaker, in particular, is a walking one-liner factory, always coming up with something so ludicrous that you can't help but laugh out loud. But it's not just him. The entire supporting cast is peppered with hilarious, off-the-cuff zingers. Every character has their own voice, and the way they bounce off one another makes the dialogue feel like a constant verbal sparring match. What's really clever about the script is that even in the most ridiculous moments, the dialogue feels natural. It doesn't matter if they're making fun of each other, dealing with life-or-death situations, or just awkwardly fumbling through their own emotions, it all feels true to who the characters are. That's where the humor really shines. It's not forced funny. It comes from the characters' personalities, their dysfunctions, and the weird situations they find themselves in. There are definitely standout lines that will make you laugh out loud or do a double take, but the brilliance lies in how those lines reveal something deeper. Take Peacemaker's awkward self-awareness, his constant battle to prove he's a hero, despite all the evidence pointing to the contrary. The script constantly calls attention to that, often with biting humor, sometimes with outright absurdity, but it always circles back to something more meaningful. You can laugh at his ridiculousness, but at the same time you can see the cracks in his tough guy exterior. There's a kind of dark comedy at play here, where the humor isn't just there for laughs but also as a way to deflect from the deep insecurities and emotional scars the characters are trying to hide. The dialogue in this show also shines in how it plays with the superhero genre's tropes. You'll get the usual action hero dialogue, I'm going to save the world or I have to do what's right, but it's twisted into something uniquely Peacemaker. The script turns those classic lines on their head, adding layers of sarcasm, irony, and absurdity which makes them both hilarious and, oddly enough, relatable. Peacemaker's speeches about being a hero never feel like grand, inspiring monologues. They feel like him desperately trying to convince himself and everyone else that he's more than just a walking disaster, even when all the evidence says otherwise. But where the writing really excels is in its character moments. Sure, the jokes are fast and plentiful, but the emotional beats hit just as hard. You'll find yourself cringing at a character's awkward attempt at opening up, laughing at the absurdity of the situation, and then suddenly realizing that you're emotionally invested in what happens next. The dialogue feels like an honest portrayal of how people talk to each other, not in some idealized, perfect way, but in a messy, disjointed, and sometimes painfully honest way. People joke to cover up their fears, throw in snarky comments to avoid vulnerability, and sometimes, in the middle of all the chaos, say something that cuts through the noise and reveals a raw truth about who they are. What's genius about the writing in Peacemaker is that it always keeps you on your toes. You're never quite sure if you're about to burst out laughing, be left with your jaw dropped, or have a tear jerked out of you. That unpredictability is what makes the dialogue so exciting. It's a perfect mix of irreverence, heart, and genuine humanity. And in a show like this, where you'd expect it to be all jokes and explosions, that balance is what makes Peacemaker stand out as one of the most entertaining and surprisingly deep shows in the superhero genre. Peacemaker Season 2 really knows how to set a scene, and not just with a flashy explosion or a fight sequence, but through its entire world building, from the smallest props to the grandest locations. The settings here are more than just backdrops. They're a part of the show's identity, giving you that perfect mix of offbeat, surreal, and absurd. Production design gets down to the tiniest detail to make sure every location feels lived in, and every prop fits like a puzzle piece in this chaotic, superhero-infused world. Let's talk about the settings for a second. They're not your typical superhero fare. You won't find grandiose, sprawling cityscapes here, with shiny skyscrapers or dark, moody alleys you see in most caped Crusader worlds. No, Peacemaker's universe feels like a weirdly relatable version of reality, just a few steps off-center. From rundown motels to grimy government facilities, the locations feel real, but with a distinct edge that matches the show's tone. When the team is holed up in a dingy warehouse or taking shelter in a backwoods cabin, it's not just for the sake of setting the scene. These places mirror the grungy DIY attitude of the characters themselves. They're not heroes with fancy bases or high-tech gadgets. They're misfits who barely get by in a world that's too weird and too big for them. What's especially brilliant is how these locations help define the atmosphere. Take the infamous old forgotten cabin in the woods where a crucial scene unfolds. Sure, it could have just been another generic spooky setting, but the way the show uses it, with all its creaky floorboards, cracked windows, and overgrown surroundings, adds layers to the emotional beats of the show. It's as if the place is just as broken as the characters themselves. It reflects their isolation, their need for both escape and confrontation. You feel the tension in every shadow, every corner of the room, and that's exactly the kind of subtle storytelling you get when the locations are treated like characters of their own. Props play a massive role in making the world feel real. It's not just about using whatever is in the warehouse or kitchen for a fight scene, it's about everything having a sense of purpose, even if it's purposefully random. Peacemaker's gadgets, weapons, and even his beloved helmet collection aren't just thrown in as quirky pieces. Each one feels carefully chosen to fit his personality and his mission, no matter how goofy or impractical they might seem. The helmets, in particular, have become a signature part of his character. They're goofy, they're fun, and they also perfectly reflect his internal conflict. He's got all this high-tech gear, but at the end of the day, it's still him in that ridiculous suit trying to do the right thing in a messed-up world. The props and settings don't just serve the story, they enhance it. Whether it's a military facility with sleek, cold steel walls or a basement crammed with mysterious alien artifacts, each place holds its own visual identity that works alongside the narrative. It's not just about filling the frame with pretty things, it's about creating a world where everything feels earned, everything has its place. That old, abandoned vehicle? It's more than just a junkyard relic, it's an artifact of the team's dysfunction. That rundown government office? Tells you everything you need to know about the budget, the quality of the organization they're dealing with, and it feels so lived in that you can almost smell the stale air. The show's use of color and light also adds to the production value. Everything from the dull beige tones of government offices to the neon glow of a sci-fi-inspired lab helps to tell the story in subtle ways. The color choices give depth to the world, but they also add layers to the emotions of the characters. If the scene feels tense or claustrophobic, the lighting and setting will reflect that. If things are going off the rails in a particularly chaotic way, the settings are designed to look almost cartoonish, making the wildness feel like a natural extension of the show's humor. The locations don't just serve a visual function, they also ground the absurdity. The fact that Peacemaker and his team operate out of places that look like they haven't seen a fresh coat of paint in decades helps balance the insane, out-of-this-world plotlines. In other superhero stories, you might expect a shiny, tech-filled base, but in Peacemaker, that same sense of dysfunction is baked right into the very buildings they inhabit. This isn't the world of polished heroes. This is the world of misfits who are just trying to make it through the day. There's a consistent contrast between the absurdity of the world and the grittiness of the locations. It's a world where the impossible exists, but it's also a world where these characters are very much stuck in it, trying to make sense of their lives and the chaos around them. From the quirky environments to the oddball props, every location adds to the sense that this is a world built for its characters, messy, chaotic, and distinctly Peacemaker. It's a universe that doesn't care if it's a little rough around the edges, as long as it keeps pushing the boundary of what's possible, and that's what makes it feel alive. When it comes to genre execution, Peacemaker Season 2 doesn't just follow the superhero mold. It obliterates it, smashes it into tiny pieces, and then rebuilds it into something uniquely its own. This isn't your typical cape and cowl story, and it doesn't even pretend to be. Sure, you've got your action, your high-stakes moments, and some elements of superhero drama, but this show uses those conventions as a springboard to dive into something far more unexpected, self-aware, and absolutely hilarious. Typical superhero narrative often follows a predictable structure. Hero rises, faces overwhelming odds, gets knocked down, and eventually triumphs. But Peacemaker isn't interested in fitting neatly into that box. The show takes the moral dilemmas, the heroic archetypes, and the high-octane action sequences you know so well and then flips them on their head. The show doesn't take itself too seriously, and that's exactly what makes it work. It isn't just a superhero story, it's a satirical, comedic, and at times absurd take on the genre. The action is wild, but it's also punctuated with moments of complete absurdity. When things get intense, it's often in the middle of a joke or a gag, and it never feels forced. It feels earned because the characters are so authentically flawed. Let's talk about action. Action sequences in superhero stories can feel repetitive. We've all seen the big fight scenes, the explosions, the CGI-heavy destruction. But Peacemaker does action differently. Choreography is tight, but it's also ridiculous. The show knows when to pull off a slick, serious action sequence, but it's just as comfortable giving you something totally off the wall, like when Peacemaker takes down enemies in a hilarious and violent fashion while making snarky comments. It's never just about the spectacle. It's about how the spectacle fits into the character's narrative. Peacemaker himself is a walking contradiction. He's both trying to be a hero and constantly messing things up in the process. The action sequences often reflect that internal struggle. It's not just about saving the day, it's about him making a mess of everything and still finding some way to make it work. Now let's talk about the humor, because this is where Peacemaker Season 2 truly shines. The show doesn't just throw in a few jokes here and there to break up the drama. The humor is integrated into the very fabric of the show. The quips, the one-liners, the absurd interactions, they all feel natural to the characters. It's not just the hero who's cracking jokes, but the entire ensemble cast. They're all dysfunctional in their own way, and the humor comes from the messiness of their relationships, their failures, and their own self-awareness. And here's the thing, this humor doesn't diminish the drama or the action. If anything, it enhances them. The fact that these characters are consistently saying things that are just outrageous adds to the absurdity of the stakes. The humor allows the show to balance the heavy moments with levity, making it feel more grounded, even when everything around them is completely unhinged. And then there's the drama. Now, you wouldn't expect a show that features a guy in a shiny helmet to dig deep into emotional complexity, but Peacemaker Season 2 doesn't shy away from it. Under all the jokes, the crazy fights, and the chaotic situations, there's an emotional undercurrent that adds weight to the story. Characters, especially Peacemaker, are dealing with real issues, whether it's family trauma, self-worth, or trying to understand what it means to be a hero. The drama doesn't feel forced, and it never clutters the show with unnecessary melodrama. It's more about quiet, character-driven moments that sneak up on you when you least expect it. And yet, the drama is never too heavy. It always finds a way to balance the absurdity of the situation. The show's real genius lies in how it takes the superhero genre and constantly subverts it. You're never quite sure whether you're going to get a fast-paced action sequence, an emotional character moment, or a totally off-the-wall comedic bit. Plays with genre conventions, but it doesn't do it in an ironic or self-consciously cool way. It does it because that's the world these characters live in. A world where the absurd is just part of the everyday, and sometimes you've got to fight a bunch of aliens while cracking a joke about your dysfunctional family. Peacemaker Season 2 introduces fresh ideas by blending humor and drama in a way that feels new, exciting, and at times even groundbreaking for a superhero show. It doesn't rely on cliches. It leans into them while tweaking them in ways that keep you engaged and constantly surprised. The action is fast and funny, the suspense builds through unpredictable moments, and the drama doesn't feel shoehorned into a plot but instead emerges naturally from the character's journey. It's the kind of genre bending that you didn't know you needed but now you can't get enough of. It's messy, it's fun, and it's unapologetically unique. And that, honestly, is what makes it a standout in the superhero genre. Peacemaker Season 2 might not wear its social and cultural commentary on its sleeve, but it sure knows how to sneak it into the cracks of the story without making it feel heavy-handed. This isn't a show that shoves political or cultural issues down your throat, but if you pay attention, it's impossible to miss the clever jabs at contemporary society, wrapped in absurd humor, action, and character-driven chaos. The series is like that friend who casually drops deep insights while making you laugh so hard you almost forget it's a critique. But trust me, it's there, and it's sharp. Let's start with Peacemaker himself. The dude is a walking contradiction, constantly fighting for justice while being, well, a bit of a mess in terms of his own beliefs. His character arc is a subtle yet powerful commentary on toxic masculinity, the struggles with self-identity, and the absurd expectations society places on people, especially men, to live up to some rigid, outdated ideals. The show doesn't directly preach about these issues. Instead, it lets the character's journey unfold in a way that feels organic. Peacemaker's moral struggles and the way he's shaped by his past, particularly the toxic relationship with his father, are deeply reflective of how toxic masculinity can be ingrained into someone's psyche. This isn't some preachy diatribe about what it means to be a man, but rather a messy, uncomfortable look at how these issues ripple through a person's life, often without them even realizing it. But it's not all about the personal level. Peacemaker Season 2 also takes aim at authority and power structures, often in a way that's incredibly timely. The show's satirical approach to government agencies, corrupt systems, and the general dysfunction of institutions feels almost prophetic. Characters, especially Peacemaker and his ragtag team, constantly find themselves up against bureaucratic nonsense, ridiculous rules, and an overall sense of disorder that mirrors the real-world frustrations many people have with institutions that claim to have everything under control. It's not just about punching aliens or fighting bad guys. It's about fighting against a system that often feels more broken than the villains they're trying to stop. There's also a sharp social commentary on identity and representation. The show digs into themes like who gets to be a hero and what it actually means to be good. Characters, while definitely on the quirky and ridiculous side, are not cookie-cutter heroes. They're flawed, messy, and often just trying to figure things out. It's a clever commentary on how society likes to pigeonhole people into roles, the hero, the villain, the sidekick, without understanding that people, especially in today's world, exist in shades of gray. The diversity within the cast also contributes to this theme of breaking down stereotypes. You've got a mix of characters who each have their own struggles with identity, whether it's dealing with the shadows of their past or trying to define themselves outside of societal labels. But what really makes this commentary land so well is how it handles sensitive topics. The show tackles complex and sometimes controversial issues, but it does so without feeling preachy or forced. For example, it looks at mental health in a way that's not just about flashy plot points but embedded into the very fabric of the characters. Peacemaker's own emotional and psychological struggles are a huge part of his arc. His trauma is real, and it's explored with a certain level of honesty that's rare in superhero media. This isn't about glossing over the darker aspects of mental health. It's about acknowledging them while still keeping the character relatable and human. The show's humor isn't a shield against these heavy moments. It's a tool that allows for more authenticity. You can laugh at the ridiculousness of Peacemaker's life while still feeling the weight of his inner conflict. The show also plays with the idea of heroism in the context of larger societal issues. In a world where everyone wants to be the hero, where every action is scrutinized and every decision is judged, Peacemaker's journey is a direct challenge to the idea of what it means to be a good guy. In the world of Peacemaker, heroes are messy, they're flawed, and they're constantly getting in their own way. It's a reflection of how society has this inflated sense of heroism, where you need to be perfect, untouchable, and self-sacrificial to be deemed worthy of praise. Peacemaker is none of those things, and that's kind of the point. The show is both deconstructing and rebuilding the idea of a hero, showing that sometimes being a hero means grappling with your own mess, accepting responsibility for your past mistakes, and doing your best even if it's a total disaster. All of this cultural commentary is wrapped up in the absurdity of the show's world, and that's what makes it so effective. You're laughing 1 minute at a ridiculous scene involving talking to animals and fighting crime in bizarre ways, and then the next minute you realize the show just dropped a major truth bomb about systemic issues or personal growth. It's a blend of lightheartedness and seriousness that sneaks up on you. The humor never diminishes the complexity of the issues, and the issues never overshadow the fun. In a way, Peacemaker Season 2 doesn't just entertain, it challenges you to think about the world we live in, all while making you laugh out loud. It's a show that doesn't shy away from the messiness of life, and by doing so, it makes its commentary on contemporary issues feel like part of the narrative, rather than a forced message. The beauty lies in how these issues are woven into the fabric of the characters' personal journeys, making it clear that Peacemaker might not be the typical hero, but he's definitely reflecting something more profound about society today. Peacemaker Season 2 has this uncanny ability to reel you in emotionally, often when you least expect it. First glance, it's easy to assume it's just a chaotic, irreverent superhero show, a fun ride packed with zany action, humor, and a wildly unpredictable protagonist. But as you settle into its world, you realize the show isn't just about laughs or thrills. It's about feeling. And that's where the real magic happens. The emotional roller coaster is perfectly timed throughout the season. You've got your moments of pure, laugh-out-loud absurdity, sure, but the show knows exactly when to slow down and hit you right in the feels. One moment, you're watching Peacemaker deliver a ridiculously over-the-top one-liner or kick down a door in the most awkward way possible, and the next, you're completely blindsided by a quiet moment of vulnerability. Whether it's Peacemaker grappling with his strained relationship with his father or a team member confronting their own personal demons, there's a depth of emotion here that feels raw and genuine. It's the kind of show that doesn't shy away from getting you emotionally invested, and it does so without being heavy-handed. There are scenes that'll have you laughing so hard your stomach hurts, but then there are others that'll quietly leave you contemplating long after the credits roll. The shift from humor to heartfelt drama isn't jarring, it feels earned. You start to realize that these aren't just characters cracking jokes and engaging in crazy fights. They're people struggling with their own issues, sometimes failing, sometimes succeeding, and always growing. And that's what makes you root for them, even when they're making terrible decisions. There are some seriously big emotional moments packed into the season. You'll find yourself cheering for Peacemaker, not because he's this perfect hero, but because you're watching him try his best, even when he messes up, even when he's a walking disaster. Those moments when he starts to open up or shows a bit of humanity are unexpectedly heartwarming. He's a character you might not initially think you'd connect with, but by the end of the season, you're invested in his journey in ways that are surprising. And then there are the shock moments, the ones that knock the wind out of you and make you sit there in stunned silence for a minute. These moments aren't just for the sake of shock value, they tie into the emotional depth of the show. When something shocking happens, it doesn't just leave you hanging, it pulls you deeper into the character's world and forces you to reflect on their struggles and growth. Whether it's a dramatic twist in the plot or an unexpected reveal about a character's past, Peacemaker has a knack for keeping you on your toes and making you feel. What's even more impressive is how well this show invites discussion. It's not just something you watch and forget. Oh no, Peacemaker Season 2 lingers in your mind, sparking conversations long after the credits roll. Whether it's about the emotional arcs of the characters, the unexpected moments of vulnerability, or the absurd humor that pops up at just the right time, there's a lot to chew on here. The show doesn't just entertain, it leaves you thinking. You'll catch yourself revisiting scenes, picking apart character motivations, and reflecting on how everything ties together. And repeat viewings? Absolutely. This is a series that invites you to come back and catch the things you missed the first time. Whether it's subtle details in the character development or Easter eggs hidden throughout the story, There's always something new to discover with each rewatch. Comedy holds up, the emotional moments hit harder the second time around, and the themes resonate even more deeply once you know where the characters are headed. The pacing and structure of the show keep it fresh and exciting, making each rewatch feel like a new experience. What's really fascinating is how the emotional journey of the characters mirrors the audience's own journey. You might start off watching Peacemaker Season 2 for the wild action, the humor, or the superhero spectacle, but somewhere along the way you start to feel for these characters in a way you didn't expect. By the time the season wraps up, you're left with a sense of fulfillment, but also a desire to see more. It's not just about plot points or character arcs, it's about the emotional investment that builds over time, turning what could have been a typical superhero series into something much more meaningful. The real emotional resonance of Peacemaker Season 2 lies in its authenticity. Characters are messy, their journeys are complex, and the humor never comes at the expense of emotional depth. It's the kind of show that makes you laugh and cry, often within the same scene, and it leaves you with that feeling that you've watched something truly special. You'll find yourself talking about it with friends, dissecting your favorite moments, and eagerly anticipating the next season, because this isn't just a show you watch, it's a show you live through. Peacemaker Season 2 is definitely a standout in the superhero and comic book genre, especially when you place it next to its fellow DC Universe brethren. In a sea of darker, brooding Batman flicks, grandiose Justice League films, and high-octane action series, Peacemaker injects a sense of fun and irreverence that feels both refreshing and necessary. Unlike its more serious counterparts, which often veer into overblown spectacle or heavy-handed morality, Peacemaker balances absurdity with heart. It's the show that doesn't just rely on explosions and flashy fight sequences but takes time to explore its flawed characters, their growth, and their ridiculously funny interactions. When you compare it to other superhero series, especially in the DCU, Peacemaker Season 2 carves out its own unique space. Unlike the darker tones in films like Zack Snyder's Justice League or The Batman, Peacemaker isn't afraid to lean into its quirky, bizarre side. Sure, you get a little bit of the typical action you'd expect, epic battles, superhuman feats, but it's how those scenes are woven together with absurd humor and deeply human moments that make the show stand out. It's a refreshing break from the overly serious or gritty superhero dramas, offering a more playful and anarchic take on the genre. And when you take a look at James Gunn's broader filmography, specifically his work with Guardians of the Galaxy in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you start to see where Peacemaker draws its influence. Gunn has a knack for blending the ridiculous with the profound. Just like Guardians of the Galaxy blends cosmic adventures with heart-wrenching emotional beats, Peacemaker does something similar but with a much more irreverent tone. The humor here is darker, the stakes are personal, and the characters are, well, messier. The sharp wit, the outlandish situations, and the lovable ragtag team? Classic Gunn trademarks. He has this ability to make you care about characters you'd otherwise find utterly ridiculous, and that's on full display here. While Gunn's work in the MCU often involves the broader, more fantastical Marvel universe, Peacemaker taps into a grounded yet still insane world where the stakes are deeply personal. The show doesn't just rest on the laurels of being a superhero show, it actively plays with the tropes and conventions of the genre. Take Peacemaker himself. He's not your typical brooding antihero. Instead, he's this loud, obnoxious, and deeply flawed man-child who is constantly forced to reckon with his past and the messed-up moral code that defines him. There's something so wonderfully different about that, especially in a genre where heroes are usually cast in a much more straightforward light. Then you have the supporting cast, and boy, they're a trip. Characters like Vigilante and the rest of the team provide this offbeat sense of camaraderie that feels real, even though they're doing the most absurd things. It's that mixture of chaos, humor, and vulnerability that Gunn masters so well. It's not just about saving the world, though that's part of it, but about getting these oddballs to function as a team, even if they're completely dysfunctional in their own right. The show doesn't shy away from making these characters deeply flawed, which makes their growth feel even more satisfying. When you consider other films in the superhero genre, you see that Peacemaker doesn't try to fit into any mold. Sure, it's a superhero show at its core, but it doesn't follow the typical hero's journey, nor does it lean too heavily on world-building or the ever-expanding mythology we see in larger franchises like Avengers or Justice League. Instead, it focuses on character development and personal stories, often through the lens of humor and self-discovery. There's a sense of realness to it, even amidst the chaos of intergalactic threats and ridiculous fight sequences. It's a superhero series that doesn't ask you to take it too seriously, yet somehow it ends up being more emotionally engaging than many others in the genre. In a sense, Peacemaker Season 2 offers a counterpoint to more formulaic superhero films and series. It's not all about saving the world or defeating a powerful villain. Sometimes the battle is within, and Peacemaker's journey is just as much about confronting his personal demons as it is about taking down bad guys. This introspection mixed with high-octane absurdity creates something that feels fresh, especially compared to the typical punch-punch-kaboom style that dominates many action-packed blockbusters. So, where does this leave Peacemaker in terms of comparison? Well, it's definitely not trying to be like the other shows and films in the superhero genre. It doesn't bow to expectations. Instead, it shatters them with irreverent humor, offbeat characters, and a sense of personal growth that few superhero narratives dare to explore in such a real way. It might share DNA with other works in the genre, but its commitment to staying unpredictable, from the tone to the characters to the emotional beats, makes it stand on its own as a unique and thrilling experience. Peacemaker Season 2 is packed with subtle layers, visual cues, and metaphors that work their way into the story, often in ways that you don't catch on your first watch. While the show may seem like a chaotic superhero romp on the surface, a closer look reveals that its absurdity is in fact a vessel for deeper exploration. It's almost like the show is holding up a funhouse mirror to its audience where everything you see feels ridiculous, but it's actually reflecting back on some very real truths. Take the character of Peacemaker himself, for example. He is, at first glance, a walking symbol of toxic masculinity and militaristic values. His obsession with peace at any cost, even if it means using violence, is the perfect satire of those who mistake aggression for strength. This ironic stance is cleverly symbolic of the internal conflict many people face, the battle between one's ideals and the often messy, contradictory actions that follow. His constant mantra of "I do it for peace" is both a laugh line and a subtle comment on how people convince themselves that their destructive actions are justified in the name of a noble cause. And let's talk about his helmet collection. Oh, the helmets! They're not just weird, fun gadgets, though they are ridiculously entertaining. They're a physical manifestation of Peacemaker's psyche. Each helmet represents a different side of his personality or his attempts at control, power, or self-deception. The absurdity of some of the helmets, like the human torpedo or the sonic boom, reflects the extreme lengths Peacemaker goes to in order to overcompensate for his inner insecurities. It's a constant reminder of how flawed and out of touch he is with what true peace and heroism should mean. Every time he puts on one of those helmets, it's almost like he's putting on a mask to hide his vulnerability, and that's where the real metaphor lies. Then there's the team itself. The ragtag group of misfits that Peacemaker is forced to work with doesn't just serve as comedic relief or a supporting cast for his antics. They are a metaphor for the dysfunction within society. A bunch of people, each with their own baggage, traumas, and faults, trying to do the right thing. Every team member represents a different struggle, whether it's dealing with emotional baggage, trying to redeem oneself, or finding purpose in a chaotic world. The show subtly critiques the notion of the perfect team or hero. It's not about assembling an elite force. It's about embracing the messiness of being human and trying your best despite your flaws. The recurring theme of father-son relationships is another powerful metaphor woven throughout the show. Peacemaker's relationship with his father, the violent and manipulative White Dragon, is a clear reflection of the destructive influence of toxic parenting and the generational cycles of abuse. Peacemaker's desperate need to earn his father's approval becomes a metaphor for how our past, particularly our childhood experiences, shape our future actions and sense of self-worth. His constant conflict between trying to be the good son and standing up for himself is the emotional heartbeat of the season. It's a struggle that resonates far beyond the confines of superhero antics and taps into something universally relatable: the desire for approval, the weight of unresolved trauma, and the difficulty of breaking free from toxic patterns. Another visual cue worth mentioning is the use of bright, almost garish colors throughout the show. Gunn loves using these vibrant hues, especially in scenes where everything feels chaotic or absurd. These colors are often a stark contrast to the darker emotional undercurrents in the show, and they almost feel like a visual representation of the show's balance between humor and heartache. The juxtaposition of these elements, the cartoonish bright colors against the gritty, messy emotional conflicts, mirrors the duality of the characters' lives, a constant oscillation between the absurdity of their actions and the real emotional consequences they face. Then there's the symbolism of the butterflies, a central plot device in Season 2. These creatures, seemingly innocent and beautiful, are actually a terrifying metaphor for how people and things that appear pure on the surface can be far more sinister beneath. The show uses the butterfly motif to explore themes of transformation, deception, and the hidden layers of society. It's a visual metaphor for the idea that nothing is ever as it seems. Whether it's the literal butterfly plotline or the more metaphorical use of the butterfly as a symbol for change and corruption, the show weaves this element in to further highlight the themes of identity, personal growth, and the struggle to reconcile who you are with what the world expects of you. Ultimately, Peacemaker Season 2 uses its chaotic, offbeat humor and larger-than-life characters to deliver a deeper commentary on self-deception, the complexity of human relationships, and the tension between personal growth and external expectations. Every ridiculous helmet, every absurdly violent scene, and every off-the-wall joke serves a purpose beyond just being funny or thrilling. They're all part of a larger tapestry of metaphors and symbolism that enriches the story, giving it a depth that you might not immediately notice but definitely feel. It's a superhero show with heart, humor, and an underlying message that stays with you long after the credits roll. Peacemaker Season 2 sits squarely within the expanding world of the DC Universe, but it's not content to simply follow the usual superhero franchise blueprint. While the show exists in the same world as the Justice League and other familiar DC characters, it carves its own path, both in tone and narrative direction. It doesn't need to rely on the high stakes of saving the world or on the heavyweight presence of iconic figures like Batman or Superman to create a compelling story. Instead, Peacemaker's identity is more grounded in its absurdity and irreverence. This is a character that wouldn't know how to save the world if he tried. He's too busy figuring out who he really is, all while navigating the hilariously messy world he inhabits. The show's place within the larger DC universe is interesting because it doesn't demand that you be an expert on the bigger, more serious franchises. You don't need to be caught up on the events of Justice League or Suicide Squad to appreciate the story of Peacemaker. The beauty of Season 2 is that it takes full advantage of the fact that this is a side project in the world of superheroes, the antihero if you will. Peacemaker doesn't have to be a part of the larger, more mythic narrative of the DC universe to matter. His journey is personal, his struggles are real, and the show invites us to dive deep into his world rather than trying to make him a cog in the bigger machine of the multiverse. That said, there are little nods and connections to the broader DC universe which make the world feel alive and interconnected, but they never overshadow the personal drama at the heart of the show. Presence of characters like Amanda Waller, or the continuation of the Suicide Squad storyline, helps to anchor Peacemaker within the larger context, but the show is never bogged down by its ties to the broader franchise. Instead, it uses these connections sparingly, focusing on its own story. Peacemaker Season 2 also builds upon the first season's successes, further exploring its characters and themes without leaning too heavily on past events or other franchises. When you look at the historical context of the show in the broader scope of the superhero genre, Peacemaker Season 2 is pushing boundaries in ways that most superhero content isn't. We're so used to seeing capes and tights, world-shattering battles, and clear moral dichotomies. In contrast, Peacemaker leans into the idea of being a deeply flawed antihero, and not in the cool, brooding way. Peacemaker is flawed in the most hilarious, cringe-worthy, and human ways, which makes him far more relatable than most heroes. It's a commentary on how we idolize figures who are far from perfect, and in that sense, Peacemaker is a modern take on the antihero, a trope that has been around for decades but never fully explored in the comedic, self-aware way this show does. Season 2 doesn't just pick up where the first left off. It builds on the legacy of Season 1, taking Peacemaker's character arc to new emotional depths. The world around him continues to grow more bizarre and dangerous, but what's most compelling is how Peacemaker's relationship with himself and those around him evolves. It's a refreshing take on what we've seen in superhero franchises over the years. Instead of just escalating the stakes with every season, Peacemaker escalates the emotional depth, showing the character confronting his flaws, demons, and past mistakes. It's a narrative journey that doesn't require you to be familiar with every piece of the DC puzzle to appreciate. It's fresh, funny, and unexpectedly poignant. In the context of superhero franchises, Peacemaker Season 2 does something that many of its contemporaries don't. It acknowledges the growing complexity of heroism and identity in a modern, flawed world. It doesn't merely regurgitate tired tropes of morality or larger-than-life stakes. Instead, it focuses on the little things, the messy friendships, the toxic family dynamics, and the absurdity of trying to do the right thing when you're constantly at war with yourself. This approach feels like a breath of fresh air in a genre that's often mired in epic showdowns and heavy mythologies. As a whole, Peacemaker exists in this sweet spot between being part of something larger while also defying the expectations of that larger world. It manages to stay true to the broader context of the DC universe, while giving viewers a show that stands alone, unapologetically ridiculous and irreverent, yet unexpectedly emotional. It's a welcome addition to the superhero landscape, especially when compared to the standard formula of epic world-saving adventures. Peacemaker makes it clear that sometimes the most compelling stories are about the flawed, messy individuals who are just trying to make sense of their own existence in an insane world. When it comes to Peacemaker Season 2, the budget tells a pretty interesting story. You don't exactly expect a show that focuses on a crude, irreverent antihero to have a massive budget, but this one definitely makes the most of what it's got. Production values are high enough to give the show a slick, polished look, but it's not trying to compete with the likes of the Marvel Cinematic Universe's billion-dollar productions. Instead, Peacemaker leans into its charm, humor, and inventive storytelling rather than bombastic special effects or world-ending stakes. From a visual standpoint, the series doesn't skimp on the action or the spectacle. Whether it's the high-octane sequences, the more outlandish elements like the helmets, each with its own wild abilities, or the creatures they encounter, the production quality feels more than sufficient. The budget is clearly put to good use in creating these larger-than-life moments, but it doesn't go overboard with CGI or complicated set pieces that might inflate costs unnecessarily. Instead, the show balances its budget by focusing on character-driven comedy, snappy dialogue, and quirky, memorable moments rather than excessive, pricey visuals. Now, when you start looking at the financial side of things, it's clear that Peacemaker wasn't aiming for blockbuster box office numbers because, well, it's a streaming series. So, no huge box office bonanza, but the real test came from its performance on HBO Max. And, to be honest, the show hit the sweet spot. Didn't have the massive opening weekend figures of some superhero tentpoles, but it found its audience, and that's where the real victory lies. It had that rare mix of great critical reception and word-of-mouth buzz which made people want to check it out. The marketing played a key role here as well. Promos were cheeky, full of that signature Peacemaker absurdity, teasing the weird humor and insane action without giving too much away. This piqued interest among fans of the first season and anyone who had been introduced to Peacemaker via the Suicide Squad. The way the show was marketed created a sense of anticipation, but it was more about the character's growth, humor, and the wild ride rather than selling it as a conventional superhero story. So, by the time Season 2 rolled around, there was a dedicated fanbase already primed to watch. The audience reception, too, played a huge part in its success. While it didn't break the bank in terms of sheer financial revenue, it was a hit in terms of cultural impact. Fans embraced the show's irreverence, humor, and the deeper layers of character development. By the time the season wrapped up, it had earned a loyal following that eagerly awaited what was coming next, which, in the age of streaming, is often more important than box office numbers. In fact, the success of Peacemaker helped solidify the show as one of the flagship projects of HBO Max, proving that, in the end, a solid, character-driven story can be just as successful as any big-budget spectacle. In comparison to other superhero franchises, the budget of Peacemaker is modest. However, it punches well above its weight. It's a financial win for the streaming platform, and it benefits from the lower-risk environment of TV, where success doesn't have to come with an astronomical price tag. And let's face it, the way the show balances its irreverence with heart, humor with horror, makes it feel like $1 million even if it wasn't made with one. The fact that it carved out a space in the crowded superhero genre, one that doesn't rely on traditional heroism or excessive visual effects, means its real success lies in its ability to entertain and connect with an audience. When it comes to watching Peacemaker Season 2, the best way to experience the show is definitely through HBO Max, where the series finds its home. Since it's a streaming series, forget about checking out any theater listings. This one's meant for your TV screen, laptop, or even your phone if you're on the go. Streaming only, so no need to hunt around for physical copies or digital rentals either. If you've got an HBO Max subscription, all you need to do is fire up the app, and you're ready to dive into the mayhem that is Peacemaker. But here's the fun part. HBO Max allows you to watch the show at your own pace, which means you can binge it all in one sitting if you're brave enough to handle all that chaos in one go or savor it week by week. There's something special about watching it on a larger screen, where the colorful world of Peacemaker really pops. Plus, if you've got surround sound or a solid home theater setup, you're in for a treat with all the insane action, booming soundtrack, and character-driven moments that will leave you glued to your screen. If you're new to Peacemaker, though, make sure to catch up on the first season before jumping into the second, or else you might miss some of the important character development and inside jokes that build over time. While each season works as its own story, understanding where the characters come from adds to the full experience. If you're a fan of James Gunn's sense of humor and offbeat characters, HBO Max is absolutely the place to be. It's also a great option if you're looking for the best quality viewing experience. Unlike some other platforms that might have weird streaming quirks or lower quality options, HBO Max tends to deliver a crisp, clear image. So, whether you're watching on your TV, a laptop, or even your phone, you'll get a pretty high-quality streaming experience, which really helps you appreciate the vibrant visuals and slick action sequences. Also, don't sleep on the possibility of watching with a group of friends or fellow fans. Watching Peacemaker in a group setting, especially if you're all into superheroes or irreverent humor, can elevate the experience. There's something about laughing at the ridiculousness of it all and sharing in the absurdity of the violence, humor, and character dynamics that make the show even more fun. In short, HBO Max is the place to be for this show. No need to wait for a physical release or worry about where to rent it. Just dive into the app, kick back, and let Peacemaker do its thing. It's a fun, binge-worthy experience that's best enjoyed on your terms, in your space, and with your favorite snacks. And if you're lucky enough to have a big screen and great sound, well, the action's about to get even crazier.